then I was off. And then I was off. No, I'm not. I had no expectation. I just went. Vera was saying that. I was like, is that like? And it's really funny that there is some truth to that because I have not heard anything from the powers that be. I was like, okay, yeah, she is the dream.
My name is John Toews, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Thank you so much for joining us both in person and online for the Winnipeg launch of This Is Entirely the Wrong Introduction. This is the professionalism that one should expect from McNally Robinson Booksellers.
Yeah. Still happy.
Well, we are here to celebrate the Winnipeg launch of Nobody Asked for This, which is, of course, the sophomore novel from Georgia Toews. Thanks to Doubleday Canada for publishing this book and for making this evening a possibility. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is, of course, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Inuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. I will not take up much more of your time, particularly given that I now do not have a speech to read you, but I will just give you a quick idea of how the evening is going to play out. To start off with, there'll be a reading from this podium by our guest of honor, and then we'll move along to a conversation which will take place at the stools to my left. Following that, there'll be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions. So please do allow those to percolate over the course of the evening. If you do have a question during the Q&A time, just put your hand up and I will approach you in what is hopefully a non-threatening manner with this microphone. That's not a comment on your ability to project. It just ensures those watching at home can actually hear your question in the first place. If you are one of those watching at home and do have a burning question, please feel free to write it into the chat, which accompanies the YouTube video, and we will put it to our guest of honor as time permits. Now, Nobody Asked for This is a razor-sharp dramedy following a 20-something comic as she navigates family grief, dysfunctional friendship, and a date gone very wrong. So says the publisher. I can reinforce that. This is a spectacular book, of which I would speak a little more eloquently on if I were not otherwise indisposed. Its author, of course, is the inimitable Georgia Toews. Georgia is the author of the critically acclaimed debut novel, Hey, Good Luck Out There. She is also a writer for film and television. Born and raised in Winnipeg, she now lives in Toronto. We are delighted that we were able to welcome her back here tonight on what is the most stereotypical Winnipeg spring day imaginable, and so grateful that you were all able to make the trip out to join us. I am going to go off Jen Zoratti's bio by memory, so please do correct me if I'm wrong in anything, Jen. Jen is, of course, a columnist at the Winnipeg Free Press, where she writes about the intersection of arts and culture in the most wonderful ways. She is also the author of a weekly newsletter called Next, which, if you have not signed up for, you should go to the Winnipeg Free Press site immediately following the event and do so right away. This is a spectacular book. We have a spectacular author and host here for you tonight. Please join me in giving a raucous welcome to Georgia Toews.
Right, thank you guys for coming. Decided, you know, if you guys ever have me back, if I write again, I really want to like pop out of here. That's just if you guys could hold me accountable for that. But thank you all for coming. I was like, I don't know, it's the weather, but then I remembered that you're all from Winnipeg, so I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just gonna read a little bit. This is more from the beginning, so I don't spoil anything. And yeah, that's my own introduction for myself. You can tell I do this a lot. Somewhere along the line, it must have been funny, my cynicism, and now it probably wasn't. Now it was probably the worst thing about me, except that I've built a bit of a career off of it. I would have liked to think I was redeemable. I mean, I wasn't that bad for a sociopath. I had asked Haley a while ago if I was mean, and she said, no, just a robot, which I countered with the fact that robots weren't generally as sarcastic as I was. And then she changed her mind and said, right, okay, you're mean. Then she winked and said, you're always serving cunt, which I think was a compliment, to be a mean cunt rather than a dull-witted robot. Though if we all lived with robots, I would bet human beings would be nicer to each other, except for the people who got weirdly attached to robots. I knew there were a bunch of real sick fucks just dying to fuck C-3PO. I realize my nieces are there. Her coffee finished brewing just as she finished putting together her peanut butter and banana toast. She came and sat beside me on the couch, making a show of putting her breakfast on the coffee table in front of me, like it was a real high-class meal. I tried to apologize with words that didn't include sorry. You don't think about food when you have to shit, I started. But if I do, next time I'll get us those breakfast sandwiches. Wallace has better sandwiches, she told me. Yeah, but I would have never made it in time. I felt like we could either argue or move on, and it would be very much dependent on whatever I said next. I didn't move for a good 2 minutes, listening to her eat her breakfast. What would your death song be? I asked her, not making eye contact. What do you mean? Or what would you like your death song to be? Like Paul Walker got that Charlie Puth song, Biggie got Diddy, Diana got Elton. Say more, she said between bites. What? What are more death songs? Avicii's Heaven or SOS? Too soon? I saw her crack a smile. She didn't generally like my dark humor as much as my, I don't know, gossipy humor. But a terrible suicide joke about the young Swedish DJ got her. That one was actually sad. We both nodded. More for show that we weren't terrible people. It was good to keep up appearances, even in the privacy of your own home. I feel like more people who died should have got songs. She furrowed her eyebrows. These days, she looked much older than 23. Her antidepressants had dried out her skin, causing her once angular face to bloat, and the extra flesh spilled over her jawline and pointed chin, creating a skin scarf that she'd pull at in tears, wondering if it was worth being less suicidal, but, in her words, hideous. She wasn't hideous. She wasn't traditionally beautiful either. But there was a severity about her face that to me screamed so cool, especially when we first met at 14. She was lighting matches in the bathroom at school, not to smoke, but to melt down her Wet n Wild kohl eyeliner pencil, telling me burning it made it last longer, before drawing thick rings around her eyes. I thought she was this Vivienne Westwood punk teen, when really she was just self-conscious about her large nose, and thought overlining her eyes would help draw attention away from it. She already had breasts, and her body was still small and soft in that teenage way that balanced out the tiny lumps on her hips and the teeniest cushion on her belly. She was objectively more feminine than I was, and her self-confidence was always so alarming. I was always wide, blocky, even when I lost weight while my mom was dying. I was 3 inches taller than her, and clothes hung off my broad shoulders like someone had tried to put a sweater on a window frame. I always took up more space. So I was so grateful to her for being my friend, as if she chose me and curated my high school experience, all based on a charitable whim beginning in that bathroom. After my parents divorced, my mom and I moved to a new area in Oakville, so I didn't know anyone at that high school. She brought me into her existing friend group, and together we all tried to mirror the fashion and dialects of the teens we watched on Laguna Beach, reruns on MTV, and navigate our formative years. I'm sure that Glee girl wrote a song about that Glee boy who OD'd. She did. She relaxed her face, focusing on her homemade coffee. That's the worst kind of death song, I think. A musical number. It's like an SNL skit. Like, can you imagine all the Glee kids mashing up Sarah McLachlan's I Will Remember You and like Macklemore on Fox? He really died. She eyed my Jimmy's takeout cup after taking her first sip of coffee. Macklemore? No, he's alive. No, the Glee boy, whatever his name was, she said. I forgot Macklemore was like a junkie. He's still just like, ugh. I know he's ugh. That's why you have to be so careful about your death song. Otherwise you get Macklemored. This isn't a bit, by the way. I always had to clarify when I wasn't trying at a joke on her that I was thinking of delivering on stage. She was constantly accusing me of slipping in bits to see her reaction, as if her validation was the deciding factor of what would make it into a set. It had become second nature to me to end a lot of sentences with, not a bit. Not a bit became its own bit in our apartment. No, I feel like you already know yours, she said. My own death song? Not really, but it would be a banger for sure though. Now I was wondering if this could be a bit. A banger? Heck yeah. Rihanna and like Yellow Claw. Why? She asked. I feel like it would encompass me. Like we're all vibing, dancing at the club, stoked on life, but then there's like, just that little stone in your gut like, all right, she did. I said the last 2 words, she did, with a southern twang, like a rancher observing the passing of an old workhorse. She smiled. I'd finally managed to bring us back to a good place. Hell of a banger, but she gone, she said, mimicking the twang before finishing her toast. It's a good time, but always with a touch of sad. That is so you, Haley said. I watched her glue her molars. Her mouth was full of peanut butter and banana. Thank you. Love that self-awareness for me. I'd want Elton. Ooh, no, Frank Ocean. she said after finally swallowing the gelatinous mixture. Shit, that's good, all the tears. Yes, and very me, like sexy sad. You're like ironically sad? I want Lana Del Rey vibes, a sexy sad girl song. Well, all death songs that are happy automatically become ironic, right? Like if they played Fat Bottom Girls at my funeral because I love that song, it would be ironic because it's not sad, but now everyone's like, right, we're at a funeral though. And it's ironic because you have no ass, she said. Right, I kind of do though. I just don't want irony, sexy sad. Haley shifted on the couch. She was wearing short shorts that were tucked deeply into her crotch and under the fold of her stomach, and her left breast was burgeoning on an escape from a worn tank top she'd bought at American Apparel before all that pervy stuff about the owner came to light. She had peanut butter in the corner of her lips and was picking at the skin around her fingernails. I remember when we applied for part-time jobs at American Apparel when it opened up in our small city. We never got hired because we were two ordinary, unsexy teens, her with her overbite, me with my tiny teeth. And they only hired bored waifish hipsters with chest tattoos and septum piercings. We lied to everyone in our high school and told them that we did get hired, but the manager sucked, so we quit. We kept that silly lie for each other and had sleepovers where we would wiggle into tube dresses and mock the hypersexual models on the billboards as if we weren't jealous. For a while, we even stopped shopping there when we were out with friends because it would be so awkward if the manager saw us. I tried to bring it up last year, reminding Haley what dorks we were in high school. She claimed that she was offered the job. She just didn't take it because I never got an interview. Now I was watching her drag her finger across her plate, dredging up the last smears of peanut butter to be sucked up by her mouth, already open in anticipation. I didn't say another word. I wanted us to leave on a good note because it always made it easier to focus when we weren't mad at each other. At least I thought so. I never asked her what she thought, worried that she wouldn't feel the same, that she wouldn't even notice a difference most days. I didn't take into account all of the audience members when I was planning that reading, and I apologize to you. I have a lot to explain later. Who is C3P?
It's okay, we'll keep it under control.
Yeah.
This part. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank
a
you.
little bit of an ordeal getting here.
It was good. I just spent a lot of time, just practicing stoicism in the Toronto airport. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, in like a lion, out like a horse.
Yeah.
Lion. So that's the weather we go with.
Yeah.
I love this book. Thank you for writing it. It is amazing. I feel like there's sort of two different things I want to talk about broadly. I want to start with comedy stuff first. The first question is the most basic question, which is why did you want to make Virginia, our protagonist, a comedian?
Well, I mean, sometimes I think I'm funny.
You are confirmed.
Thanks, guys. I really need that validation. Well, I have experience in the stand-up comedy world. When I did move to Toronto, sadly leaving Winnipeg, I went to comedy school and and then I did stand up and I did that whole thing, and I unfortunately dated stand-up comedians, and I was a server at a stand-up comedian bar, and was responsible for a lot of over serving comedians, and I am sorry for that to the world because they probably thought of a lot of material in those instances. So I am very familiar with the world. And it felt very natural to me because the only reason why I was doing stand-up was so people would notice my writing. Like I always kind of had a love of theater and improv and sketches and more of that sort of thing. And when I wanted to pivot to focusing on writing, that seemed like the natural way to draw attention to it, just yelling at people through a mic. Obviously I don't have a Netflix special, but I did enjoy my time, before the hey, good luck out there period of my life. And so, I think that's why I just wanted to go back and kind of explore that. That version. Yeah.
Because all roads lead back to memes. There's like there's a social media trend where people are like, you're so funny. And it's like, thanks. And then they're like the most horrific thing you've ever heard. So it's like, comedy is processing trauma. Comedy is armor. Comedy is deflection sometimes. All those ways we use comedy and we use humor, I feel like Virginia does all of that. And I think comedy plays various different roles in the book. Talk to me about writing Virginia kind of from all sides, because we get to see her stage persona. We get to see how she is with Haley, who we met in the part you read. Yeah, just considering all facets of her personality.
Yeah, I did want to show the parts of her, the parts that I worried about and still do, as a young woman and a younger woman, the parts that I worried about so much, am I a mean person? Am I cruel? Am I hurtful? While also trying to search for joy and make people laugh and protect myself and survive. So I wanted to show her, kind of put the spotlight on this friendship where she's struggling. And she's worried how that will make her look and what that will say about her if she's not friends with this person, if she lets this go. I wanted to show her experiencing different types of grief and comparing them, and again, just forcing her way through them with comedy, without comedy. And so it was important to show her with different friend groups, to show her on stage, to kind of show the messiness and all these ways that she does try and survive, and she tries to figure it out in her own muddled way.
Yeah. And I think there's a line in the reading that you selected, and it kind of plays as a theme throughout, which is Virginia always took up more space than her friend. She takes up space on stage. She really shrinks herself in all other areas of her life, and including in some pretty devastating ways, which we won't spoil, but she really tries to keep herself small. So talk to me a little bit about that and kind of where that juxtaposition came from, because I know, having interviewed comedians, it is very striking sometimes how they are on stage versus how they are in conversation or in person, right?
Yeah, I think comedy, it makes you feel brave. You're kind of forced to feel brave, and people look at it and say like, oh, how could you be so vulnerable on stage? And it's like, this is where I feel like I can protect myself, because I can own the narrative. I can control the narrative. And, and I think she makes herself so small in other ways because she doesn't have control. And I think that's terrifying, at any age, and especially, dealing with grief or certain traumas and also processing that. There's almost this embarrassment in the way she feels when she can't use comedy as that barrier to kind of handle this and talk about it. And there's this shame that she shouldn't feel in experiencing grief, and she shrinks away, and because it's and that's what I wanted to explore, the idea that can grief exist alongside comedy, and she's just kind of constantly trying to find a way where she can feel brave and she can feel safe again, and that's in comedy. And I think that's why she talks about these moments where she feels smaller, trying to bring that into comedy. So because that's her way of speaking about it. So you kind of needed to see those really terrible moments, just so you could kind of follow where she can get to.
Yeah, well, and it's also the grief, but also her body. So like, there's a lot of like, gotta hold your pee, gotta, make sure you go to a coffee shop so your roommate doesn't hear you. Like, there's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Which I also found really interesting and very true to who she is, I think. I also love that you included her comedy sets, because I have read novels where the main character is a comedian and you don't see that. It's like this weird Severance thing where they're like, go on stage and then they're out, and it's like, you're ready to stand up.
Yeah.
And we don't ever see that. I love that we do, and sort of see the evolution of it too. So why did you want to include that part of it? And did that create any challenges in writing?
Yeah, yes. I still kind of question that idea, because it seems, strange. But I'm really committed to the bit of having written stand up. Because like, you had to be fully immersed in her world. And I really, I keep thinking of Steve Martin when he's like, people aren't gonna get it now, and they might not get it when they're reading it, how it's funny, but on the drive home when they're thinking about it. And that's how I really had to make it okay for myself to put stand up, the transcript of these stand up acts in it, because I was like, stand up, it's such an energy thing. You're there, you're performing. What does it sound like? What does it look like? And I can't, and I also didn't want to do that and break up, the sets being like, I'm going to say this, he said, brusquely. Like, I wanted it to be this whole kind of attack on this comedy. And so I did kind of go back and forth if I wanted to do that, but I wanted us to stay in Virginia's, you know, her lens, her world so much, and we couldn't without seeing that, without, you know, hearing what she's hearing, and also, you know, seeing what these people are talking about on stage, which is not, you know, and so we get to see more of like, this is what people talk about, and it's not always great. And, you know, I had to write stand-up that I did not enjoy writing, but I was like, if I was a 19-year-old boy, this would be what I think is funny. And I can say from experience, because I unfortunately was in a comedy school with many 19-year-old boys, you know, pretending this is a body part. And so, and I had to be honest about that. So, you know, it was challenging in the fact that I had to approach it honestly, and also with the understanding that I'm like, I'm trying so hard to write funny material, but it won't read that way, and just like making my peace with that, just so it would stay with that kind of flow.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenging things, like when you're writing for the room, you have the energy, you have the immediate feedback. Whereas when you're writing humor for print, it's for a laugh you will never hear, but hopefully have, you know, like, like, well, I laughed, hopefully someone else will in a year from now, whenever your thing is coming out.
Yeah.
So I think but I mean,
Thank you.
But yeah, it's different. It's a different thing. But having experience, having written both, like, do you find that, like, is it harder?
It's definitely like, and I like to go method with my writing. So a lot of the time, like, I'm feeling that grief, like I'm just sobbing, and you know, my mother, just so everyone knows, she's still very much alive and well. She's okay.
They don't let the Virginia Georgia thing.
Yeah, there's no. But and with comedy, yeah, it's like I had to get up and perform it, and it was quite like an uncomfortable feeling, being like, oh God, this brings me back. But it's just so interesting trying to write comedy, especially from the point of view of someone else.
Totally.
And also it was so interesting trying to write comedy, because I feel like it's such a personal thing. And that's what makes good comedy great, is that, you know, it's your weird abstract opinion on, you know, this kind of universal experience, or, you know, this funny thing, like, and it wasn't about me. It was, you know, it was Virginia, it was these other characters. So it was a lot more work than I anticipated, you know, trying to get in these lived experiences and what they, you know, what their opinion would be. And then, yeah, having no clue if it would actually land, other than, you know, what unfortunately my husband had to sit through, you know, in the evening. I'm like, okay, I got something for you.
Is this anything?
Yeah. Which is like not a nice thing to do, to like hold someone hostage and be like, okay, I got a new 10, just sit there. Like, that's why it's dedicated to him, just as an apology.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
But you include the bits of others too. So there's like probably, like 2 hours in there, right? But I thought it was such a rich site to explore characters, because you know exactly who these guys and gals are, just based on how you structured. Which I love too.
Yeah.
Moving on from comedy to friendship. I love novels about female friendship, specifically my jam, so I really was into this.
I was thinking of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But their friendship is so interesting, because it's so, I mean, even in the excerpt you read, you can see sort of the, I don't want to hurt this person, but there's also like this kind of low-key like disgust with this friend that you've had forever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that thing where you're maybe growing out of each other, but you don't really know what to do. And we don't really have language for that as a culture, right?
Yeah.
And exploring a time in your life, they're in their early 20s, things are changing a lot, their lives are changing a lot, and you know, they kind of have all this trauma together and apart. So yeah, Virginia and Haley, tell me about how that relationship came about.
I mean, I really wanted to focus on that friendship, and it was important to me to explore that, you know, because I started writing it in a time, you know, kind of after Hey Good Luck Out There, after having a kid, and seeing, you know, and moving away, and kind of reflecting on how much my friendships have changed and evolved, and you know, and then coming back to these friendships, you know, especially after time, and in the pandemic, just being forced, it's like all we have is talking.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can't just sit there and go see a movie. And I wanted to focus on that, and the intimacy of friendship, and how, and also, I mean, you know, the shame of losing a friendship and how big that is. You know, it is a loss, and it's a different type of loss, but you know, because we kind of approach romantic relationships with like this end goal, but friendships are supposed to be this thing that, you know, they're supposed to be this endless thing. You meet these people when you're young and you cling to them, and when you lose them, it does feel like a loss for yourself, of yourself, a version. And I think, you know, with Virginia and Haley, especially with what they're going through, they need each other so much to be that sense of safety for them. They need that, you know, each other to be that person that they were for each other, you know, at a different time in their lives. And it's, you know, and it's heartbreaking for both of them in a way they can't acknowledge, because it's not a romantic relationship, you know, they don't have this, are we gonna get, but like, it's just, it's supposed to be this fluctuating thing, but they won't let go of what their idea of what that should be. And I think that creates so much tension, but I think that's really real. I mean, as we, you know, go through things as adults, we go through these life changes, and you know, how much are we willing to let our friends go with that trust that they will come back. So I just really wanted to explore that, because I was so grateful for my female friendships, you know, after writing Hey Good Luck Out There, and I just really wanted to explore, you know, how much that meant to me, and just the importance of that.
Well, and I think also what you beautifully capture in this is exactly that, the intimacy, all the things we don't talk about with friendship, but I think that if you're very lucky, you experience, but we don't have good language around if you need to break up, or if you need to stop seeing this person, or if this person is bad for you, the way we do about romantic relationships. And I think they both navigate that, but I think it's also, but then she also has her group of comedy girls, which I also love too, where it was just like, it wasn't just, you know, the difficult parts of female friendship, it was also the wonderful parts that I think we look for when we look for friends, and when we're looking to bond in that way.
Yeah, and I wanted to show that, like, you know, the idea, the possibility of meeting new friends as an adult, and again, like how, you know, that is a beautiful thing, and you know, that should be celebrated as much as, you know, these kind of old bonds that we hold on to. You know, that they're different, but they're still just as important. And I really loved writing that group of girls for Virginia, because it was just, you know, it was such a safe spot, and it was and I really, you know, I didn't want competition within that friend group, and I just wanted it to be this kind of really wonderful thing for her.
Yeah, no, I noticed that too. Like there was just like, no, they were just so genuinely happy for each other, and it was such a nice foil to Haley, who could be quite jealous, and it wasn't anything to ever do with Virginia. That was totally Haley's thing, but it was just, you know, it's we all have that experience where certain friends may activate things. And I thought that was really beautifully handled. Obviously there's also trauma in this book. Virginia goes through a lot in a really compressed amount of time. But she also is still dealing with the loss of her mom, which happened when she was a teenager, but she's still dealing with that. I guess, I don't know if challenge is the right word, but like kind of the experience of writing through that. Because as you say, your mom is a mom. So yeah, just writing about that loss, and then kind of exploring it through these different lenses.
Yeah, well, I really, you know, like, I saw an interesting quote on Instagram, you know, and it was talking about, I don't remember the quote, but, you know, how grief, you know, it doesn't require consent, that it just comes, and it is kind of this assault on us, that we can't control all the time, and, you know, it's this intrusion, and so I liked that contrast, and I did want to explore that, you know, I don't know if I ever will, or maybe in a long time, be able to write about myself being a mother, because that just seems so terrifying. I already have, you know, like I left my kids already for 2 nights. I already feel guilt. I don't need to fictionalize it anymore. And so, but I wanted to write about that loss, and, you know, with a mother figure, and especially, and again, you know, as a young woman who in these moments would want to look to her mother, I mean, re-feeling that grief framed now in this completely different way, where, you know, you don't have this sense of control. And I think for Virginia, that's so important to her. And that's why, you know, comedy, like, she has this power. So when she's kind of re-feeling all these feelings, based on now what's happened to her, it's a really scary thing for her in a way that I don't think she expected it to be. And I really wanted to focus on that, like how it just, it comes and goes in waves, and that she has to find some way of accepting that is maybe not comedy, but or maybe is.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it.
Well, the observation about grief as intrusion and that idea with consent, just thinking about it now and hearing you talk about it, you can kind of think about that through the comedy lens too, where if like we've all been in a room where you've had that really confronting comedy set where you're like, whoa, this person is talking about stuff that I was not expecting, and I'm feeling a certain way, as you know, art should make you do. That's also kind of a thing where you have to give up a little bit of control, just being in the room and exticing that with. So there's many layers.
Yeah, you know, it's an onion. Just gonna quote Shrek. For my nieces.
They are not listening.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
But yeah, I think that's really interesting to kind of explore the layers of that way. Second book, talk to me about the writing experience versus the first time around, because I know the first book really pulled a lot from your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the writing experience and how it was this time around.
This, I mean, it was much more enjoyable, just point blank, for a lot of reasons. But it's funny because, you know, hey, good luck out there. It's this autofic. But it was such a nice feeling, because this book just also feels more like me. I felt like I had more confidence in myself writing it, in the voice, in the characters, and it felt, even the actual writing of it, it was quicker, it was more intense. I was, you know, just kind of in this state where I had to get it done, and it was a really, really enjoyable and exhausting experience. But you know, I've always said for my first book, like the first draft, there was a farm, it was sci-fi, it was there.
I remember you telling me.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was trying to be like Jonathan Lethem. I'm like, we'll put a giant tiger in the middle of the city, it's fine. And now, you know, and going into the second one where I had that confidence of like, don't do that. It made the editing process a lot easier. And it was such a nice feeling to get to that point, like even just as a human being, to have that trust in myself. And yeah, so it went quicker, and and I kind of made myself sick, but it was all worth it. I also had like a funny deadline where I had to finish it because it was one of my lovely friends' bachelorette parties, and I wanted to get my nails done. So I was like, I have to finish this book so I can have silly nails for this girls trip.
We're not writing.
So priorities. If I ever, you know, write a master class, set deadlines, you know, based on vanity.
Motivation comes in many forms.
But no, it was it felt like a much more intense experience in the way that I just was writing a lot more. But it's funny how it feels more like me, just because the voice, I feel like it feels more grounded, like speaking from my diaphragm.
It also, there is a real sense of urgency to the pace too. Like it's one of those books where, and I hate telling authors this, where it's like, I read it in one sitting, and someone's like, cool, I spent 3 years of my life on that. But it is one of those books, like you will take it down, because it is, you want to know what happens and what happens next. I'm very invested, not just in Virginia's life, but in Haley's too, and everyone else in her orbit, which is something else I wanted to talk to. Just the families you choose and the families that you find yourself in. So her relationship with her stepdad, I thought was really lovely. And just all these other relationships that you created, that you gave to her.
I really wanted her to have this like touch point, this character, you know, that almost wasn't family, and that's, you know, where Dale, dutiful Dale, came in, because, you know, I wanted it to be this safe space, but not this kind of warmth, you know, like a mother would be, you know, like this, you know, this comfort. It's there, but it's in a kind of also distant way, and I kind of
stilted, like
like it's unconditional love, but like you won't hug when you see each other. And I tried to picture, even though I didn't really know him, like the voice of my grandfather, Melvin Toews, just in that kind of like really quiet, like you can feel it, but you also can't, like, it's not, this tangible thing. And that was really important to me. You know, I like putting my family in different places, and so if I could put him there, and you know, the character, the father character in Vancouver, I'm gonna be careful. It's not my dad, but I took a lot from that because, you know, my dad is a very funny character. He's a very entertaining character. And it's definitely not his wife. I know I take a lot from my life, but you know, I can tell you who it's all based on later.
Okay.
You know, and I just wanted to have what felt like these real family dynamics. And I also wanted to show like how these family dynamics kind of fail us, even though there is love, even though there is this unconditional love, because, you know, it's also mirroring what she's feeling with Haley. It's like, she wants so badly to be loved, but it's just, no one's doing it right.
Yeah.
And that's a really, you know, and I mean, nothing feels right. You don't know. I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. You do know what love is in your 20s, but you also maybe have ideas of what it should be. And I wanted to highlight that in all aspects.
Yeah. I felt like with Virginia and Haley too, it was that thing where it's like you have a glass wall between them, and it's like they can see it and they can almost get there, but they can't quite, but they don't know what there is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made their relationship so heartbreaking in a lot of ways. You know, which isn't necessarily the same thing as being sad, but it's just, it just kind of be, oh, I can see it for both of you. I can see both sides.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for both of you, but also Haley, girl. But you know, like you just kind of have that ability to kind of see from both sides.
Yeah, and I wanted that. I didn't want it to be an attack. I wanted there to be tenderness. But I also, you know, didn't want either one, to be a villain, and because I don't think anyone really ever is. It's just people, you know, and people can be assholes and still be loved and still need tenderness, and you know.
I have to ask and you handily we planned it, read the excerpt I was hoping you'd read. What's your death song?
Oh no. Oh boy, I have to say, I just did an interview with a CBC interview, and at the very end, and I read the transcripts, this is just a quick aside, and I thought it was going really, really well, and at the end, they're like, what's one song that like encapsulates the book? And I was like, that's a lot to put on the spot.
There's a lot of songs.
And all I can think of, because I was like, I just went into mom mode, is my children's favorite song right now is Talk Dirty by Jason Derulo and 2 Chainz.
Perfect.
Because they say the word booty a lot and they just love that. So that's the song that I said encapsulated the book.
Perfect.
It does not. If you listen to that song, I can't manage that expectation. There's no sold out arenas. And bling. But a
Jason
song,
Derulo saying his own name.
Yeah. I know. I mean, if Jason Derulo sang my death song, would that be the worst thing? I feel like
I feel like
have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make TikToks to it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, my death song, again, I think I would want a banger. I would want something fun because I mean, people would obviously be devastated that I'm gone. Obviously. It would be very hard for them. So, you know, I would want something, now I'm just thinking of like that terrible song. It's from a movie when it's like, don't cry out loud. We'll do it inside, that song. Cause does
it also depend, like, when I was thinking about this question, because obviously as soon as I read it, I was like,
yeah.
Am I young and is this a tragedy?
Yeah.
Or am I 105 and is it just like kind of sad, but she had a good run, you know?
Yeah,
I think the song choice changes.
Yeah, like if I'm 105, like I don't know what songs the Roblox will have made for us. They're, you know, unwilling slaves at that point. So, but yeah, no, if it happened right now, which is a terrible thing to think of, yeah, just something really inappropriate. If you guys could just arrange that. I know that's what you want to take home with you to think about. Yeah, maybe Jason Derulo. He has a great catalog. Yeah.
I think this is a good segue to open it up to the audience.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions for Georgia?
Boy.
Well, I was just wondering if you could talk about the twist at the end that happens at the wedding.
Oh no.
Without giving it away, but what does that do for the book? And you know, what kind of experience can people expect?
My experience was horror.
Oh, no.
But then also laughter.
The twist at the wedding. I really wanted her to have a win in that sense. You know, in that physicality. But I also couldn't let it be a full triumphant win, because I'm not a very sincere person. I mean, I am, I try, but like, I'm like, that would be too neat and clean. So that is why that had to happen that way. And I also, you know, and it was again important for the family dynamic too, to add that kind of tragic moment as well. And I think it was important for the book because it also, you know, it leads down the road to, you know, kind of the final moment where again it should be a funny thing, and I think that's, you know, kind of the whole book. It should be funny, but you know, maybe some things aren't, and Virginia has to maybe learn that through this terrible thing. I don't know, have I sold you guys on it? In a really vague sense. Yeah, the wedding twist.
The wedding twist.
Everyone
it is a twist.
dies.
Yeah.
I just stole Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Any other questions out there?
Oh, this was easy. This was great.
Just the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well. I think that's it.
Great. I'm like, oh, that's one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's gotta be more.
I just thought I'd try to contribute. I wanted to know if you could tell me what it's like to have a mother that writes as well. Like, is there competition? I don't know how to put that. If you could just give us something on that.
Physically, there's competition between Miriam and I. She's much better at tennis. I'm much better at wrestling. We practice both weekly. No, there's no competition. I'm thrilled to be in the same conversation as her. I think that's an honor, and I'll never shy away from that fact that, you know, I think it's a little harsh to compare me because I'm still learning. But no, I'm thrilled anytime, you know, I get to be in the conversation with her. She's obviously amazing, and there's no competition, and that's the beautiful thing about what we do, and how, you know, this work, it's storytelling, and it's so personal, and it's, you know, it's just this way of conversation and of survival, and we all have to find that in our own way. So I've never felt that, you know, we can put those two against each other, because we're gonna survive in our own ways and just support each other in that practice. So I've yeah, other than the physical, we're good.
What's it like having a brother who's no?
It's true.
That was my sister's joke.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the process of writing with young kids? Like, how do you do this?
How do you?
I don't. Yeah.
That's my sister-in-law. And yes, again, I don't feel competition with my brother writing for the same thing, but I was really happy, just an aside, because he was a very impressive and still is impressive athlete, and I took him to my gym so I could finally best him at like a very specific lift, just so I could finally feel good. If we're still talking about physical competition, good. I'm still mad that in high school you got the athletic genes. No, writing with young kids, I like the pressure, because I daydream a lot, and I talk to myself a lot. I have a lot of conversations with myself, not really about anything that, you know, is usable in the work, just me. And so when I know I have this limited time frame, that's a really good reason to write. And it's also really lovely, you know, when I am writing these scenes, you know, about loss, it was incredibly difficult to you know, go to that place, you know, either losing my mother or being a mother and picturing my kids losing me. And that was kind of a place I really hated going. And so it was great when I, you know, could come out of it and, you know, just dance to the Moody song with my kids. And I really appreciated that break. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Just trying to sneak in as much Jason Derulo.
Just as much. We mentioned Jason Derulo way more times than I expected.
Hey,
Hi.
just wondering, what books inspired you to become a writer? I mean, obviously, but it's in the genes, you and your brother and your mom. But you know, what books inspired you to?
I mean, I did like to read as a child. You know, I read a lot of Archie comics. You know, from a young, I don't know, I think it's just the process of reading it, especially from a young age. And it's interesting because I love reading autobiographies, and I always talk about, you know, one of our favorite books as a family is Random Family by, I believe it's Adrienne Nicole LeBlanc. And it is, you know, just kind of this nonfiction retelling of these different people in New York City. And I've always, I think more autobiographies inspired me to write because I love people, and you know, and I love just watching them and looming and observing, maybe not interacting all the time. I get tired, but you know, and so I think a lot of biographies really shape that. And I now I'm just like blanking. I'm like, I read them. And as well, I'm like, books, they just come and go at such different parts in my life. Like I even read, you know, Less Than Zero, and I just couldn't believe how Bret Easton Ellis started a sentence. And then I read American Psycho, and I was like, maybe he's not for me. But you know, and it comes and goes. You read Murakami, and then I try and write stories about being an owl that maybe owns a library, and again realize don't do that. So you know, any book that just has an interesting observation on people. I'm not a huge fantasy person. I apologize. I just like to know about people, why they do those things. And I'm not smart enough to be a psychologist, so I just make it up in my head. And they agreed to publish it.
Who do you think is going to die this season on White Lotus?
Oh my goodness, we were just talking about this, White Lotus. So I know a lot about it, but I've been saving it up, so I can watch it all at once, which I'm not happy about, but I agreed to with my husband. So I've only seen like the first two. I have my theories, and I mean, I hope it's Greg, just because I hope it's Greg. But I also don't trust Mike White because I know he can be like a little petty, in the best way. So like, I'm also like, will he just like kill Belinda? And I'm really worried for her. So
I'm also worried for Belinda.
yeah, so that's like what I want versus what I think. Yeah.
That age-old struggle.
Yeah, exactly. The heart wants what it wants. Yeah. Did you have
Sylvia won't stop saying you now.
Oh no. What? Oh, do you have one?
Oh, there's a question in the back.
Okay.
And then some giggles.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was just wondering, do you have plans for your next story, or have you started thinking about that yet?
I do, but I won't tell you them, to build up suspense. No, I do. I always have plans of things, because the thing is, the way I write is I make so many notes, and I'm like, this is gonna be a great story, and I have like notebooks and notebooks filled with being like, and then this happens, like, you know, I do the whole place card thing on the corkboard. And as I start writing, none of that happens. It just kind of just goes where it does. So any idea, even if I told you, I'd be like, I'm gonna write about a talking horse. And then it's like, you have this dystopic farm novel that I finally circled back to, and I would feel like I lied to you. So I won't tell you what my ideas are yet. Sylvia, do you have a question?
This girl totally has a question.
Yeah.
She said how are booties made?
How are booties made? Jason Derulo is involved.
Comedy genius.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you know, when you combine forces of Jason Derulo and 2 Chainz
And some beats.
yeah, you really, that's where the booty is crafted in excellence. Yeah.
Gosh. Anyone else?
It's hard to top that one.
It is hard. I feel like that's our natural closer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Georgia, for being here and for sharing all of this with us and the book, and congratulations. It's always fun with you guys.
Thank you both so very much. We will move along to the signing portion of the evening in just a moment. We will be placing Georgia in this chair here. There will be a moment of chaos while some of you get into line. Please do feel free to have a book signed before you pay for it, but please do pay for the book before you. We're so incredibly grateful to Doubleday Canada. I am being so incredibly obnoxious by forcing Georgia to get up and off the chair, so I will keep this short. Thank you very much to Jen Zoratti. Thank you to Georgia Toews. Thank you all for being here tonight as well, for your attention, for your questions, for braving the outside world. This is a hilarious, heartbreaking, caustic, beautiful book. Please do buy as many copies as you like. We have some on the table. We have even more we can fill these stacks with. And also, thank you for being here tonight for a momentous occasion. This is the most time the word booty has ever been said in our interview. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care.